Good morning. Welcome to the Digital Health Europe webinar on challenges and best practices of public authorities in securing European funding and exchanging knowledge to advance their digital health and care systems. The webinar is taking place until 12 o'clock today. My name is Veli Strothmann. I'm director of Empirica in Bonn, Germany, and Empirica is coordinating the Digital Health Europe project. This is the agenda for today. After my short introduction note, we will have two speakers from the European Commission presenting on the European funding landscape for digital health and care and providing examples. We would like to give you the opportunity to ask questions immediately after this session, which will be introduced to you by Jose from FUNCA. Then we will have during the webinar two interactive survey sessions, and I will say a little bit more just after this slide, and this will be followed by several very concrete examples on funding approaches by regional healthcare representatives and examples from our twinning activities. Next, please. Some housekeeping rules for this webinar. All participants are muted by default, and during the interactive part, the organizers can unmute participants who wish to comment. I would like to stress that this is a recorded webinar, and the recording will be published on our website. As I mentioned, two parts of the webinar do require the use of an interactive tool called Mentimeter. Please be prepared to be given an URL to participate via this tool, and preferably do use another device like your mobile phone. You have two ways of interaction: by clicking on the symbol raise hand and waiting for the organizers to call on you, or by submitting a comment or question through the question and answer panel. As I said already, the recording slide deck will be made available after the event on the website and also in a follow-up email. Next slide. These are our panelists, altogether 10. I would not introduce everyone in the interest of time, so please, to all speakers, panelists, moderators, please say a few words about yourself when you start speaking. The Digital Health Europe project is running now more than 2 years until end of June this year. It does have 17 partners and a very wide community of associated experts. You can see here the many partners. This is coordination and support action. Next slide, please. To provide support to the European Commission communication on the digital transformation of health and care. And here you see on the top 3 what we call multi-stakeholder communities working on implementing the 3 priorities of this communication: citizens' secure access to and sharing of health data, better data for research, disease prevention, personalized health and care, digital tools for citizen empowerment and person-centered care. You can see here the many actions and activities Digital Health Europe is undertaking to achieve that and to provide at the end actionable recommendations to policy decision makers. And in the middle of this diagram, you see the funding advice. This is the topic of this webinar today. Next, please. Okay, then I would like Jose to come here and introduce this part of the webinar. Good morning, Jose.
Good morning, Belly. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to moderate the first session that is on the European funding landscape for digital health and care and provide some examples. The idea of this session is really to better understand the challenges that public health authorities experience when they apply for funding. Also, we would like to share some good practices or best practices even and consideration on how to work efficiently with the different funding schemes. And finally, really generate some kind of discussion between the funding applicants, the regions or the public health authorities, and also taking advantage that we have here some representatives from the relevant funding bodies. If we focus on the European landscape, really we have this morning with us two very relevant speakers that will open the discussion. In first place, we have Sasa Jenko. I hope I am pronouncing your surname in a better way, in a good way. So Sasa has been working for the European Commission for more than 13 years in different DGs, DG RTD, and now she is working in DG Reform. That's why she is going to talk about the new technical support instrument for health sector reforms. And then we will have Birgit Molion. She is a program officer in health and care for the DG Connect, and Birgit will be presenting some EU programs from 2021 to 2027 and some opportunities for the health and care sectors. Then we will have 10 minutes for question and answers, and just after that, I will pass the floor to my colleague Anes Rusanov for a Mentimeter interactive survey, and she will explain this better than me. So I think we need to start with this, and let's get started with Sasa. The floor is yours, Sasa.
Thank you very much, Jose. I would like to thank Digital Health Europe, Feli as Birgit for inviting me. I will just start with my presentation directly. So without further ado, I would like to mention that with Birgit, maybe next slide, please. We started the journey several years ago when we were preparing and thinking about how we could organize a pipeline for improving health systems by connecting different funding streams in Europe. Here we try to somehow share on how research and innovation, best practices in member states can be implemented in healthcare systems, improve the healthcare systems, and inform the policy. So this is a sort of a pilot pipeline, which on the next slide is complemented by different funding streams. The landscape is quite complex, but we are here with you to guide you through the process. What I will do, next one please, is just explain a little bit on this little dot on what is the structural reform support program and the new technical support instrument and how you can apply it in practice. And Birgit will give an overview of the other instruments. Next slide, please. What do we do in Reform? DG Reform is a new kid on the block. We have been established a year ago from Structural Reform Support Service. And what we do is we offer technical support to member states, to the public administrations, to actually carry out the reforms. So we are working in different areas, from tax reforms to education, and most importantly, of course, for us now today, is health. In health, we had since 2017 already more than 150 requests, out of which we supported 60. And more than 30% of those requests, I would say that almost close to 50% now, are in digital health. Here are examples of what we are currently supporting. For example, creation and implementation of a national health center in Czech Republic. For example, development of the e-health strategy in Croatia. Then trying to somehow set up an improved architectural framework of the whole e-health landscape for Estonia, and so on. Next slide, please. So what do we actually mean by support for reforms? The technical support instrument helps the member states to improve administrative capacity to design, develop, and implement reforms. So our budget is around 120 million per year. Next slide, please. How do we work? So we are open to every member state and to all kinds of areas, and we cover an entire life cycle of reforms. What we offer is tailor-made support, and it is always on the needs of the specific member state. Next slide, please. Here you can see that we are offering support to almost all member states. Next slide, please. How do we work? We do not offer the funding, but we offer technical advice, either through our expertise inside the Commission, through international organizations, consultancies in private sector, or other member states officials through the TAIEX instrument. How does this work? Well, it works through grants and procurement, either by expert missions, study visits, different types of analysis, and what we also do is we form reform partnerships. So we support seminars, peer-to-peer exchanges, consultancies, we support drafting technical specifications, we support designing the reforms. Next slide, please. Priorities for this year are, of course, linked to the European semester and country reports, and of course to the recovery measures linked to the pandemic. The two big priorities for us is, of course, the implementation of European Green Deal and the digital transition. Next slide, please. In the support for recovery and resilience plans, what we do is we can help member states to design the plans to actually then use the recovery and resilience money. And what we will also do is we will help them to implement those plans if or after they will be granted support from the recovery. Next slide, please. So how do we work? A member state that wishes to receive support submits a request to the Commission. It is always based on the member state's needs. What we do in reform is we provide guidance on the main elements that need to be included in the support. And then all the requests from one member state, regardless of the area, so transport, financing, health, are coordinated in a central way through a national coordinating authority. And then they're submitted to us. And once again, support is not financial assistance. What we offer is technical assistance. Next slide, please. Here are the contact details if you're interested, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have. With that, I would like to thank you, and I think I will give the floor to my colleague Birgit. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sasa. Yes, Birgit, I think the floor is yours. You can start your presentation that will be mainly about Horizon Europe and digital Europe and the opportunity for the health and care systems. I want just to remind Birgit, before you start, that the attendees, the audience, you can make questions in the area of questions in that panel, and then I will post them to Birgit and Sasha after the presentation of Birgit. So Birgit, you can start.
Thank you, Jose. Thank you for inviting us to this seminar, and thank you also to Sasha for the nice introduction. And indeed, as Sasha already mentioned, it's not very easy to find your way within the funding jungle of all EU instruments that are available. So as Jose said, I will focus a bit more on the research activities and digital deployment activities. Next slide, please. And as Veli already said, the digital transformation of health and care is an important focus point that we from Commission side already raised in 2018 through our communication that's based on this the transformation of health and care and the importance of digital. That was long before we were aware of the pandemic that's ruling our world these days, which indeed showed that being prepared and having the necessary digital infrastructure was important and still is important in order to manage the crisis, but also to keep in touch with healthcare provisioners, to receive your chronic care treatment at a distance in situations where we were confined and not able to go to hospitals. So we saw over the last 10 months a big increase in uptake of remote consultations, digital tools in order to be connected to family, to informal caregivers. And of course, we hope that once we return back to normal, that this digital component in the health and care systems will be there to stay. And on the next slide, I will try to explain a bit how if you have plans and ideas on improving the digital component in your health and care system. So what is going on at Commission side and how you could benefit from funding and support. So with the new year 21, we also started the new framework programs, like we call it in the Commission, for the next 7 years, so 21 till 27. You have different actions there where there are EU-wide collective efforts that are supported in research programs and deployment programs. Then you have more the national, regional and local support in the cohesion fund and agriculture funds, and also in the reform support where Sasha explained, where it's more a one-on-one relationship with a country in order to fulfill their needs. And then there are also the financial instruments, or we have venture capitalists, instruments for supporting startups, scale-ups, new tech companies to bring their solutions to the European market. In the next slide, please, I will first zoom in a bit more on the research and innovation and the uptake of digital solutions. That's mainly covered in 2 programs: Horizon Europe, which is the research and innovation program of the Commission. Next slide, please. And then the Digital Europe program, which enables more, takes the research. If you go through this innovation funnel or innovation circle that Sasha showed, so if you take the research and innovation results, we then move them into Digital Europe to enable technological deployment. And there, where in Horizon Europe, you you have preliminary testing, proof of concept and pilots. In Digital Europe, you will be able to do large-scale pilots in real conditions or in living lab environments, like we sometimes tend to call it, and in order to then move to really full operational deployment afterwards. Digital Europe is a new program in this new 7-year period. Horizon Europe is the successor of Horizon 2020 that some of you might know, but Digital Europe is also a new kid on the block. On the next slide, you see a bit more the structure of this Horizon Europe research and innovation program, and we won't go into all the details, but you see in pillar 2 in the middle there is a cluster, like it's called, dedicated to health, health in the broad sense of the word and covering all the aspects, but of course digital is also an important component of this health cluster. And then on the next slide you see that's reflected in the so-called priority areas within this cluster health that have the nice name of destinations. So there are 6 destinations that are tackled in the cluster health of Horizon Europe, and the 5th destination, for example, is unlocking the full potential of new tools, technologies and digital solutions for a healthy society. So there we find again this digital transformation in the health and care sector. And then also important for you to know is the destination 4 is ensuring access to innovative, sustainable and high quality healthcare, which is more focusing on the health system in a whole. And within that 4th destination, there is also room, or we're working on a potential partnership that's on the next slide, together with member states. So that's a research and innovation partnership called the Transforming Health and Care Systems, where the Commission and member states pool resources and funding together in order to tackle the problem drivers that are listed on this slide here. And you also see the poor uptake of technological innovations is one amongst the others of key problem drivers identified here. So this is really a joint effort between member states and Commission. So on the next slide, you have a link at the bottom of the draft proposal for this partnership that's published on the Commission website, and that was written together with a drafting group of some member states, but that's open, consultable for everybody, and we're still working on shaping further this partnership. So if your country is not involved or you want to know more about it or to join, you can consult the information available here. So that's a bit on the Horizon Europe program, which is collaborative actions on supporting research and innovation, and it's very early in the research chain, and it might be sometimes a bit not mature enough or tangible enough for administrations or health systems that are really looking for deployable solutions and services that they can use immediately together with healthcare professionals or patients. So there we have the Digital Europe program that is coming a bit closer to deployment, but is not targeted at deployment, but is testing these digital solutions at a large scale. And the overall rationale behind the Digital Europe program is increasing the strategic autonomy of Europe in digital technology, so that we don't depend on the Googles and the Facebooks and the Twitters that are all American based and governed organizations, companies actually, So we really need to strengthen the digital technology base in Europe, and that's the main objective of the Digital Europe program. And in the next slide, you see that the Digital Europe program is focused or constructed around the main technological drivers like artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, high performance computing, but also digital skills and digital literacy. And digital health literacy, because we're all confronted every day with the infection figures and hospitalization rates regarding COVID. So our society is becoming more and more data driven, and we also need to support healthcare providers but also patients in how do I interpret these dashboards, how do I use this data in order to manage my health. And an important or an interesting instrument also in this Digital Europe program are the digital innovation hubs, where every European NUTS region, the aim is to have in every region an innovation hub, which is a single point of contact for companies, but also for public administrations to support them to go through the digital transformation. So it's also interesting to see in your region if you're aware of who this digital innovation hub will be, or if there is one upcoming, because that's also a way of supporting you in getting in going through the change management for this digital transformation. And these are the programs that are within, let's say, the normal EU budget, the 7-year multi-annual framework. On the next slide, please. But then, because of the pandemic last year, that started last year, there is also an extra pot of money that was put aside in order to fight the pandemic and to help member states to recover and to get back on their feet after pandemic, and we all hope that we will soon see some light at the end of the tunnel. So apart from the 1.1 billion regular funds, let's say, for the 7 years, there is a 750 million extra money that is awarded or is set aside to support the recovery of member states, and that's under the so-called Next Generation EU program. And Sasha already referred to it. The biggest portion of money of the 750 billion is available in the Recovery and Resilience Facility. That's on the next slide, where the member states can introduce their recovery plans, their national plans, to request money out of this big pot. And Sasha and her team can help you in shaping these plans. And the deadline for that is 30th of April 21. And the real granting of the money and the actions resulting from it should start. It should be operational between January 21 and 26. And if you look into this recovery and resilience facility on the next slide, you will also see that there were some priorities set from Commission side on this national recovery and resilience plans. And you see that the Green Deal, of course, the green transition is one of the priorities, but also foster digital transformation in all sectors, but of course also including the health sector. So at least 20% of the resources and should contribute to the EU's digital transition. So if you make a quick calculation, 20% of 600 and something billion, it's a lot of money that's available there for your support of the digital transformation. So that's a bit what I wanted to tell today. It's an overall view of the available programs and funding lines, and of course in each of them there is room for healthcare specific actions, and health is covered, and even more now when after the pandemic started, health is really a priority area that's crossing throughout all the programs. And depending on what support you're looking for, is it research or is it really deployment and infrastructure building, you have a wide scala of possible funding lines available there. Thank you. That's over to you, Jose.
Thanks, Birgit, for this very clear and comprehensive presentation. Now we have already 4 questions in the section of question for you. I'm going to start for one that is clearly for Sasa and then go to the other 3. The first one is from Diane Whitehouse, and she's asking really to be successful in this program that you have presented, the technical support scheme. The applicants have to go to the national body, but is there a kind of contact point, and is this very well known by citizens and regions in the country? For example, if I am a region, how can I apply for this kind of funding?
Thank you very much for your question. Indeed, what I will do is I will try to find the link and post it in chat. So we have a sort of a map of all the national coordinating authorities. These are usually the ministries of finance. So they are coordinating inside the countries. They're coordinating all the sectors. What we support is not only at the national public administration, but also regional. What I have to say is that we only support public administration. We do not support private organizations.
Okay, thanks for the answer. And I have another question that is probably generic from Julia Skerbina. I hope this is more or less her name. And it's related to standardization. Really, the question is, is the Commission coordinating any kind of program or funding program that can be applicable for standardization in the digital health and care sector? Because she considered that this is necessary.
Okay, so standardization, there are the European and international standardizations bodies like ISO and CEN, and where a lot of standardization activities on health and health information at different subcommittees, and depending on the needs for certain standardization, the Commission has a say in putting priorities in the rolling plan of these standardization bodies. So out of our consultations with stakeholders, we can, if there is a need for certain actions, we can distill that. And for example, that's how it worked with mHealth. So there is currently a quality label being set up in the ISO 10 Committee 251. They all have this strange engineering nomination letters of separate committees, and that emerged from the green paper on mHealth in 2014 that the Commission published, and one of the clear follow-up actions requested from the stakeholders was that there was a need for a quality label on mHealth apps, and then then it was injected in the rolling plan, and it takes time before it's adopted by the member states are also in the governance structure of the standardization body. So if they recognize that it's important, they can start activities and on developing standards. But that's only one example. But then, for example, also on the electronic health record, there in 2019, the Commission published a recommendation on further harmonization and structuring of the electronic health record. That's not immediately resulting in a standard, but it's pushing vendors and healthcare authorities to align and to agree on common approaches in order to increase the further uptake of electronic health records.
Thank you, Birgit. And next question is also for you. It's from Mark Lange, and the question is very clear and straightforward. Is, will the grant agreement rules of the Horizon Europe be identical to the Horizon 2020 rules?
Yeah, so they're in Horizon Europe and compared to Horizon 2020, as we say, it's not a revolution, the transition between the two programs. So it's continuing using the same instruments, research and innovation actions, procurement, coordination and support actions, so and the partnership. So there are no big changes between Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe. So it's continuation of the same principles and provisions. There will be some adaptations because we always try to cut the red tape and make it more lenient and more flexible, but no big revolution.
Yeah. Another question, this is from me, linked to this, is, do you have any extra information on when next calls for Horizon Europe and Digital Europe will be published? Because that will be a nice news for our
Yeah, I forgot to refer to it during my presentation, indeed. So the first work programs for Horizon Europe, it's a work program covering year 21 and 22. So it's it's a 2-year work program that will hopefully be published somewhere in April. So, but don't take me on that. The validation process and the approval process is ongoing, and also at Commission and Parliament level, the overall Horizon Europe program still needs to be endorsed. So we have an agreement on the multi-annual financial framework. So the budget was approved, but now the program as such still needs to be endorsed. And as long as that is not the case, we cannot move on with the work programs. But as soon as that is, everything is in place to to give the kickstart once that's so. Let's say, like timing is looking at it's April that the work program will be available, and so then the calls for 21 will open. And then, yeah, depending on you have x months to build consortia, to apply for the to submit proposals. So it will be summer, after summertime submission deadline. So the first grants will hopefully still be signed this year. And for Digital Europe program, it's about the same timing there. So also Easter eggs, let's hope, will bring us
in our calendar.
Yeah.
And we have 2 more questions, but we do not have time to answer, to pose them. And I would just wanted to very link to this question to Sasa. Is the technical support instrument already open and people, I mean, national governments and regions can apply for it?
Thank you, Jose. So the technical support instrument will be open. We have a yearly cycle. So usually the member states send their requests in October. The deadline, the usual deadline is the 31st of October. And then we actually, if the requests are then selected for support, then they're usually implemented within half a year. So that's the usual cycle. There might be another call in Easter as another Easter egg to help the member states with the recovery and resilience plan, but that is not yet, it is not yet really clear whether it's going to happen or not. But for sure, every October there is this deadline. And we also help the member states if they have questions or issues, or if they don't know exactly how to crystallize their unmet need, we are here to help. So thank you very much.
Perfect. So Birgit, so many thanks for this presentation and your very straightforward and clear answers. And now I have to give the floor to my colleague Annette Rusanov for the Mentimeter. That is an interactive survey. So Annette, explain us what to do.
Thanks very much, Jose. What my role here is to facilitate the transition between the institutional speakers and the regional panel with 3 questions. You see on the screen now that you should go to on your mobile or desktop devices to www.menti.com, enter the code 7569-419, and then a question will be waiting for you already. The first question, by the first question, we would like to have a feeling of what funding instruments you use for advancing your digital health and care agendas. You can have more than one answer, so you can use more than one instrument. We will give you some time. We've set it for 45 seconds, and then we will assess the results. So you have instruments from regional funds to large-scale European funds, ERDF, national, Interreg, COSME, Erasmus+. And there is also an option other. If ever you have other instruments, other preferences, you can post the name of the instrument if you wish to the questions panel. So we're awaiting your answers. Good, so the answers are there. It seems that the framework programs, so FP and Horizon 2020 and the national budget funds are equally popular. I think that this is not surprising at all, but the regional funds actually take over the lead. So these are the regional funds are the most used instruments, but it seems that loans and credits from the EIB and COSME are not really the instruments for advancing digital health and care agendas. And there are some other instruments as well. I didn't get any specification in the questions panel. I don't know if you would like to still drop it there. And quite popular are still the health program and Interreg. So regional, national framework programs, and then health program and Interreg. Let's move to the second question. I would invite you to use actually the same code. So the second question will come up here. And actually that will decide on the third question. So in which phase do you face the most difficulties when you apply for funds? Is it in the initial phase when you identify the calls, look for the right instruments? Is it the preparatory phase, so the proposal writing, or is it during the implementation phase and the reporting phase? Again, you have a couple of seconds to drop your answers there. Here, please choose one, because otherwise, if you choose all, it will not really give us any weighted answer. Okay, so it seems that it is the preparatory phase, the proposal writing, which is the most challenging for the public health bodies. Yeah, and the reporting phase is the least challenging. So now I'm asking Daniel to show us the list of the preparatory phase bottlenecks, because we have pre-prepared some possible potential bottlenecks that you might face. And here you can see already a predefined list. Again, you can cast your vote to more than one potential option. And then there is again other. And again, in the question panel, you can specify what the other is. So if you could tell us what exactly causes you difficulties during the proposal preparation? Is it the support of obtaining support? Is it allocating human resources, understanding the eligibility, translating the needs to project language, the time scale, competition, or partner search? So what are the main challenges? What are the main pitfalls when you prepare your proposals? Okay, when the time is up, Danielle will show us the results. Ines, I see your question. The Mentimeter link is www.menti.com. And then you have the code. The code, which is 7569-419. I hope that helps, Ines. So let's see the result. Good. So it seems that most challenging are the it's very small letters. So it is the too large competition, and then the allocating sufficient human resources to the preparation. And we didn't get any others, so it seems that we quite well predefined the options. Now it seems that the too large competition even takes over now the human resources, and the least challenging is the one on translating the technical needs to project language. So it seems that goes quite well, but the competition scares people, which is quite normal, especially if you apply for Horizon 2020 or Horizon Europe calls. So just a little wrap up of our interactive survey. It seems that the regional funds are the most popular, that the most difficulties the public health bodies face during the preparatory phase, and what the most difficult part for them is allocating human resources. And with that knowledge in mind, we would like to invite 3 regional speakers who will give us hands-on experience, hands-on insights to their approach to funding. The first speaker will be Anne Kiele. Anne has been a research manager at the Stavanger University Hospital since 2016, and she will talk about the Stavanger approach to funding. The floor is over to you, Anne.
Thank you so much for the introduction, and also thank you very much for inviting me to this very interesting webinar. And welcome to the Stavanger region, everyone. I thought I should start with a fun fact about the Stavanger region and the picture to beginning. Because everyone who thought that Tom Cruise was fighting in the mountains of India in his last movie, that's actually wrong. These mountains are in the Stavanger region. Well, enough of that. Over to EU and funding. I work at the research department of Stavanger University Hospital. We are the 4th largest hospital in Norway, and we have approximately 8,000 employees from more than 30 countries. And we serve a population of approximately 380,000 people. We are also one of 5 university hospitals in Norway, and that means that research is one of the mandatory tasks for us. And as such, we have 20 research groups and more than 300 ongoing projects. And these projects, they range from small PhD projects to large EU projects. And they also reach from basic research to clinical research and innovation. 10 of the projects are funded by EU, and 5 of the EU projects are digital health related. So next slide, please. So when we talk about the Stavanger approach, it's actually much broader than the hospital point of view. In fact, we have put a lot of effort lately into becoming a one strong regional team, including both academia, industry, and municipalities. So the pictures are showing that we are currently building a new hospital close to the University of Stavanger campus. And in this campus, we also have a huge research institute and a large innovation park, which can get more collaboration going. So included in Innovation Park, we also have a technology transfer office and a Norwegian smart care cluster with more than 200 companies available for collaboration. Of course, the overall aim is more collaboration and to use common infrastructure, have a lot of experience transfer, and share the resources, the human resources especially. The Stavanger region is also a 3-star reference site under the European Partnership on Active and Healthy Aging. And with 29 partners in the region interested in health projects and EU funding, it's fair to say that the Stavanger region and approach is diverse, but I will continue with the hospital point of view for now. So as you all know, the projects should always be derived from identified needs, and to make sure the needs are addressed. In our research strategy at the hospital, we have a lot of aims, and one very general one is saying that we shall increase the external funding contribution to research. And more specifically, we shall increase the level of regional funding, but the combined national and international funding shall still be greater than the regional contribution. We have also said in our strategy that we shall participate in at least 3 EU projects at any time and at least 1 as coordinator. Of course, to achieve this, we need to increase our international network and further develop all the research support functions. We, of course, have also a lot of aims related to prioritize medical topics and methodology, including digitalization. However, I will not go into them now. So next slide, please. So did the strategy work? Yes, since we implemented the strategy in 2017, we had a steady increase in competitive applications and projects with EU funding, as you can see from the graph. But we also have had a lot of increase in both regional collaboration and a lot of new international friends. It's actually a lot easier to get more project funding when you already have secured some. So how we did it is a combination of several factors. First, mobilizing the best researchers and convincing them that being involved in EU research is actually not mission impossible. In fact, it's definitely worthwhile gaining access to all the best knowledge and technology to our patients. But it's also a little bit like playing in the Champions League for researchers, and that's also a carrot for them. So with next slide, please. So with more projects, that means that more of our colleagues have experience to share, both related to applying for funding, reporting funding, and also to running projects. We regularly organize EU seminars, sometimes alone and often in collaboration with partners, funding authorities, and industry. At these seminars, we present all the ongoing projects, discuss common challenges, and we also present new opportunities and calls, as well as all the available support systems amongst us. So next slide, please. So from a hospital point of view, a typical funding approach for researchers is to start applying for individual PhD or postdoc projects at a regional health trust or at the university. After that, many move on to larger projects with several partners, but they still apply for funding at regional sources. I think perhaps 70% of our funding proposals are sent to regional sources. So that is very much in line with what we saw just a minute ago. Having said that, when you have received regional funding, it is expected that you apply for national funding next, for example, at the Research Council of Norway. Here you can apply for larger research and innovation projects, which often require national and international collaboration, has an interdisciplinary focus, and also sometimes require collaborators from different sectors, like municipalities and industry. It's also possible to apply for centers of excellence and research-based innovation, and the evaluation system is very similar to the EU system, preparing us for applying for EU funding. We are in fact using all instruments with relevant calls when we apply for EU funding. So in addition to that, we also apply for industry funding and get collaboration requests from the industry, and we have several, you can just go back to the previous one, please. We have several ongoing projects and programs with different types of mixed fundings. For example, in one EU project, we had a lot of samples collected, but only a core set of biomarkers were included in the scope to fit within the available overall budget. And to get the most out of these valuable samples, we applied for additional funding at the Research Council of Norway to do more analysis and exploratory biomarkers. So in the end, it was a win-win situation, both for the patients, the researchers, and the funders, because we all had access to a combined results of the two projects. So now you can move on to the next, please. And I would really like to highlight the very good support systems we have available in our region. I think one of the main reasons we have managed to continue an increase in EU activity and funding is a lot of good helpers, and both regionally, nationally and internationally. In addition to our research department at the hospital, we have access to all the support provided by the EU unit at the University of Stavanger. We also have a health campus in Stavanger with common infrastructure for academia, municipalities and industry to increase collaboration. And we have our regional health trust, Helse Vest, that is providing funding for developing EU projects. And in addition, a very popular one, for each euro you receive from EU, they will add 10% extra funding. At the national level, the Research Council of Norway and Innovation Norway is very essential to us. All the people you see in the middle photo are so-called national contact points, and they are EU experts in different fields, helping Norwegians to do well in Norway. That's their main priority. In addition to all their knowledge, they also provide a lot of training coursing, both in writing proposals, reporting proposals, etc. And they have information about upcoming calls and programs. They are also providing funding for planning and preparations of EU proposals, and this is essential for us and allowing us to get the clinicians some extra time away from everyday duties to actually have focus on project development. But I would also like to say a few words about how grateful we are to have our own EU office in Brussels. They have been teaching all of the Stavanger region about how EU works. They have provided the perfect place for connecting people, both from our region, but also potential future international project partners that has also shared their experience with us. And in addition, they are doing a great job promoting the Stavanger region and making it easier for us to invite or be invited into interesting project consortiums. So thank you so much to all the good helpers. I should perhaps have ended with the previous slide, but nevertheless, in spite of all the good support just mentioned, our researchers still finds a few things challenging on their way to EU funding. And first, similar to the study before, EU proposals are the most complex and time-consuming of all funding applications and very competitive, as said. So sometimes they wonder if it's worth the time or if they should stick to regional funding, which is still competitive but less complex. Finding the perfect consortium they have found difficult sometimes, and also to be invited into one can be a challenge, because many of the established consortium, they continue to apply together for new calls. It would therefore be great to have more brokerage events to meet potential partners in the future. Finding relevant calls is of course essential, and as much as we understand the need for prioritizing, we would also like to have more opportunities to influence the priorities, the work programs, and also the calls. Finally, budget size. We sometimes experience that we are too expensive in Norway and must limit activities or add funding from other sources in order to include everything we would like to do in a project. So with that, I think I have spent my dedicated minutes, and I would thank you all for your attention with another picture of the pulpit rock, which is actually in Stavanger and not India. So thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Anne, for this very rich presentation. So what I have noted for my side here, just to summarize, are the key successes, or the key to success on the ecosystem. Strategy definitely helps. Project attracts projects. Skills and people are essential, who manage this project, who can build this project and share the challenges, so network between them. You exactly approved that the regional and national funds are much easier, less competitive, still competitive, but less competitive. It's more in the comfort zone of applicants, especially at the beginning. And you need a support system, helpers. You need extra funds, capacity building, the EU office, but still there are challenges like time, complexity, and the priorities influencing and the costs. We will move to another part of Europe, so we will come down from the north to Central Europe. And Marcin and Irek will do a joint presentation to us. Marcin Podgorski is head of unit of the Department of Promotion in the Locki region, Poland. His department is in charge of international promotion of the region and project management. And Irene Staron is the director of the Clinical Trial Center of the Medical University of Łódź. He's been a project manager for 5 years with experience in international environment. The joint presentation also shows the ecosystem thinking, so the collaboration between the regional voivodeship, so the regional government and a university and a university hospital. So I'm passing the floor to you, Marcin and Irek.
Hello, everybody, and great to see you. I see we have a very international audience. So I start with the Polish dzień dobry, which means good morning. I could say also Jona Podkiwanok, because Annette is from Hungary, and it is so nice to all of you to have on board. Yes, so we are working very hard on e-health. What is e-health for us? It's a combination, it's a cooperation between ordinary health systems and the digital. We try to connect different stakeholders in the region, but also not in the region, but in other regions. That's why the project management is scaling up to other countries in Europe. We close cooperate with the national funding, and since 2018, as you have on the picture, Poland started a program called e-zdrowie, which means e-health, and we see that today's expenditure of 6.3% of the GDP can really be used as the tool to speed up and to attract private entrepreneurs who are seeking for health innovation. So we believe very much that this system cannot be only financed from the national level, but it needs to be financed also from the European level. I'm very thankful, and I was listening to our colleague from the European Commission. She was saying a very important issue about the patients and about the digital innovation hubs. These two issues, these two things we are having in the scope of our minds when we try to speak about the adequate clinical treatments. And for this, we need to ask the market, we need to ask the startups to accelerate the innovation, we need to ask our stakeholder ecosystem. On the next slide, you see that we identified 12 of the main actors in our regions. These actors are from all parts of our system, which means national and national level from the government, but also from the regional and local administration. This is one pillar of the triple helix, let's to say. The other one is medical universities and regional hospitals. And this is where the innovation can meet patients. And we all think that the patient is in the center of our philosophy and of our strategy. That's why we start with ideas, go to the working groups, go to the ideas, and then in this point of the care, we try to develop this. And to make all of this working and moving from the financing of only public money, on the next slide, you will see that we grouped these all stakeholders in two different working groups, in two different let's just say cooperative. And in this cooperative one is where the innovation will take place on the left side, where you have startups, regional hospitals, R&D innovation centers, where when the innovation solution can grow, when the ideas can be built, and then together with a close cooperation with investors, we call invest group, we can find the money and we can find real steps moving us forward to better digital e-health. Next slide is where the biggest challenge, for us is hidden, let's to say. This is a big data. The most important thing is that the patient is in the continuous process. So a lot of institutions needs to share data about the patients, which enormous amount of information is collected at every stage of the processes, and then it's needed to be distributed into a proper way with the RODO and all other regulations, but it needs to have a very good tools, and for this we need to have a good system. This system can be only produced by the innovative SMEs, innovative group, as I showed you on the last slide, and this needs to be also worked out in international stakeholders cooperation and with the final beneficiaries. Let me give an example. On the next slide, I would like to focus on one special group. This is a silver economy, or the patients, the older elder people. So there we started to work very much on the digital, and we tried to use this ecosystem, which I presented to you in the theory, in practice. So we identified 6 areas like finance and insurance, technological standards, interoperability, data security, other technologies or hurdles, and IT training. And then we try to map it with the areas or with this invest and ideas possibilities. And as you see, we found it that, for example, elderpreneur, driverless cars, not only healthcare system is influencing the real treatment of the patients. So when you move on the next slide, I put some information about our Silverstal platform, digital platform which connects on international Central Europe project ICAR system. The objective is to make closer innovators, ideas, and patients, that everything what is produced to the market, everything what is proposed to the adequate treatment of the patients is close to each other, so everyone in the task force, in the working groups can hear to each other and see the opportunities in order to use, as you see, the possible e-health savings of 36% of the GDP, and also increase the efficiency in the telemedicines, in the better clinical trials, in the clinical trials 2.0, which means clinical trials at homes, and the close cooperation with a variety of small and medium-sized enterprises, startups, all the stakeholders, brings us already today, and with the project and with the program of Horizon Europe and the programs which were presented of digital transformation by BIRGIT, will help us to drive it forward, because we are looking for a better innovation, sometimes also disruptive. Thank you for the floor. I handle it out to Irek. Thank you.
We cannot hear you. You should unmute yourself.
Okay, so thank you very much, Marcin, for the great introduction. Also, Anna, thank you everyone for having us here. It's a great honor to have the opportunity to share our experience with you. Okay, Marcin said about how important is a patient for us, but also to be able to deliver new technologies to patients, we need to bring different institutions, different units together, also on the regional and national level. But I think it is also very important to scale it up to the European level. Talking about Medical University of Łódź, I would like to bring our experience on 3 points, which is the capacity building for academic research based on our clinical trials network that we are creating at the current moment, integration and synergy of funds, both on the national and international level, and integration and of existing medical records to speed up the process of delivering new therapies to our patients. On the next slide, to start with any sort of integration, any idea, you have to have something underlying. And a few years ago, we have noticed that we were missing certain phases in development of medicinal products, for example, or different technologies. And it was very important for us to complement this this value chain, so-called. We called it as vertical integration, and we have noted that, for example, we were missing early drug development unit. So for academia, it's very important, as this is radical innovation, early phases for implementing new technologies or bringing new technologies to patients, but also to empower the research in the stage. So we thought that we had to bring this kind of research into the academic facilities, our facilities. On the next slide, we have gathered all different roles within the process of conducting clinical research. And we have also noted that we can apply the horizontal integration. So within the university facilities, we can bring sponsor role, which is the role of initiating the new studies, new research, bringing new research to patients, also non-commercial research, as well as commercial research. But also we've got different facilities or different different units that are scattered around the university that can, if brought together, can run the research in the role of academic research organization. This is the role where the okay, could we get back to the last slide, please? This is the role when the organization runs or conducts the research on behalf of the sponsor. But also what is important is that we, as the leader of the clinical trials network, we establish site management organization. So it means that we can bring new standards, new quality systems, new standard operating procedures to the clinical research, which is very important. Also, what is crucial, our clinical teaching hospitals are acting as clinical sites for the clinical studies, and our researchers are investigators at the same time. And we add or complement this pyramid with early drug development unit, which is very important, as I said previously, for developing new technologies. So on the next slide, you can see that we were able to gather different sources of funding. On this picture, you can see our clinical and didactic center. So I'm representing clinical trials unit, but as you can see, there's a huge hospital, and the new investment and development is running at the moment. Also, we've got some ambulatory facilities for treating the patient. We've got two huge investments in terms of new laboratory facilities, state-of-the-art equipment, as well as teams, research teams, which is called Molecular Up and Brain. And to end this process of bringing new technologies to the market, we've got MediHub, which is focused on TTO, technology transfer, and cooperating with the industry. Next slide, please. Why is it important to complement, to bring new sources of funding? Not only we are not focusing only on external public funding, but we need to cooperate with the industry, not only for the knowledge transfer, but also to complement this funding, to learn more, to bring new knowledge to the industry, but also to learn from the industry about different processes. We have to work together as one unit, with the ultimate goal, which is to bring new technologies to patients. And this is our strategy, this is our vision that we would like to implement every day. So you can see on the slide different logotypes of our partners from the companies like Baxter or Pfizer, but also through agenda of Ministry of Health from Australia, South and Western Sydney Local Health District. We've got University of Utah from United States, and etc. We've got some research units or institutions from Canada, but also we've got some companies from the region which are exporting a lot of their medical products, medical devices to foreign markets. And I think bringing all this together, working around the university, I think is very important in order to bring new technologies in digital health, but not only to the patients which are in the center. The next slide, please. So this is our project that we are running at the moment. We try to use the clinical data that are in our hospitals in electronic health records together in order, for example, to run the research on it, on aggregated, anonymized data, but also we can speed up certain processes like feasibility process for clinical trials, which is very important. In clinical trials, the time is very, very important. We've got certain time to run the clinical research, to go through different stages, as we noticed recently due to the pandemic, how important it is. So we're trying to create and to implement the IT system that can bring us some valuable data also for the sponsor of such clinical trials, pharmaceutical companies, medtech companies. Our system will work, will help us out in the feasibility. The sponsor will be able to get more information about the characteristics of patients in our sites quicker, better, and of much higher quality. So that's what I wanted to add on my part. And I would like to thank you for your attention. If any questions, you can either contact me through my email at the bottom, or you can call me. These are my datas.
Thank you very much to our Polish speaker. So I'm just summarizing, and in the meantime, I'm waiting for the questions in the chat panel from the audience. We had one already, but we are waiting for more. So while Martin explained and outlined how the region helps with the triple IP in innovators, investors, idea, and patients to facilitate the project participation and the implementation of the priorities, regional priorities, by the actors like EUREC and his clinical trial unit, for whom we heard what really the priorities are: capacity building, feasibility, the sponsors, the integration and synergy, and how you build your infrastructure around the priorities and what the projects you run. So my first question would actually be, what are really the challenges, EUREC? So when you applied, what were the challenges?
Okay, I would convert this question. I think we can seek for better synergy within different funds. I think the funds and the programs that can complement local funding based on the current opportunities. So, for example, I can give you an example. Last year, Polish government established medical research agency with huge funds to support non-commercial clinical research. But we would like to scale it up to the European level, but European partners are not covered within this program. The cost is not eligible. So, for example, we're looking for the opportunities for our partners because, let's say, we've got rare diseases, so we cannot run only on national level in one country. We need our partners. So I think the idea would be to better monitor the sources on the country level and to look for the synergies on the European level.
Yeah, I see. That's what you find really as a challenge, and that would be a recommendation. Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. Good. I have one question. I don't know. I'm asking Strahir. Do we have the time to take one question?
Maybe we can move to the next session, and we have a longer Q&A period where we can combine the two sessions.
I will. Yeah. We will save the question from Theodore to the last question. And so I would like to thank our speakers and Marcin and Irek. And I'm passing the floor to Strahil now, who will lead you to the twinning part.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Thank you and welcome everyone. Well, we are covering now a different aspect, but very much related to funding. We've heard from the speakers so far, there are these big programs giving lots of money. Twinnings is a bit different, but we believe that it has its own spot in the kind of funding horizon. It is, however, not its own funding initiative defined, as we know from the different instruments. It's not a funding instrument that has its own agenda and regular calls. So that is one of the reasons we are presenting this to you. We've been testing the approach with twinnings in Digital Health Europe and other projects such as the Scale a study and the We4a projects. So we have some experience. We want to share it with you and hear also from yourselves what you think. Should this be a regular instrument? Because right now it's being implemented, as I said, as part of your existing projects, but it could potentially be its own instrument in its own right. So I see that there are also some twinning partners in the call. By the way, just so you get a feeling, the webinar started with about 100 participants, and right now we're at about 80, 85. So there are some twinning partners amongst the group, and there are maybe some of you who don't know what twinnings are. Just very briefly, I will introduce twinnings and then also an example with one further speaker. So twinnings, as I mentioned, they are addressing the need that instead of these research projects which are developing new technologies that are needed to be tested, twinnings is addressing another part of the pipeline, which is already completed projects who are successful. Let's take, for example, a large-scale pilot project. It's been successful, it's been proven in terms of efficiency, effectiveness, it's ready to be implemented. And what happens usually in these projects? Well, in the best case, the beneficiaries of the project continue this effort, adopt it further in their regions or nations. But the question is, what about the others? Are they aware, all across Europe, are they aware of this very good practice? And things are happening at the European level. We know from, for example, the European Commission, and the fact sheets of European funded projects are getting much needed improvement. There's lots of information for each project, but still you have to dig in deeper. So twinnings are addressing this area of the project where something has been developed, it is mature and it is tested. So we call these innovative practices. And by innovative practices, we mean this can be really a product, a service, a process, a methodology, even a business model or a strategy, which works. And to not reinvent the wheel, it would be great if a small amount of money is given to the owner of this innovation. We call these originators, to teach others who are interested, we call these adopters, in replicating the success, in not reinventing the wheel, in learning from the challenges experienced by the originators and kind of getting this expert knowledge to cut the way shorter and to reach a full adoption without the problems that were experienced by the originator, if any. So twinnings aim to facilitate the transfer of digitally enabled innovative practices for implementation from one place to another. We're typically talking about local, regional, or national healthcare authorities that are interested in this. And it could be a one-to-one twinning, so one originator twinning teaching one adopter region, or it could be one-to-many. We'll have an example shortly with several adopters at the same time. The time frame of these kinds of small mini projects, let's call them, are typically up to 1 year, depending on the twinning type. And what we are funding is we're providing funding for the activities related to hosting meetings, to technical groups, to travel expenses, possible licenses. So ideally, you know, the originator and adopter have the idea of implementing this, and they're just receiving this basic support through a twinning project. And the process we have in Digital Europe is through an application. So there were twinning calls, which were resulted in selecting certain twinnings, which are currently ongoing. Many of them are ongoing and implementing the twinning projects. This is roughly how it looks like in the Digital Health Europe project. We are also offering a marketplace to kind of connect these originators with adopters. So it's a marketplace where you can say what kind of topic you're looking for, or what kind of topic you can offer, what kind of innovative practice. The twinning itself happens through the guidance of the Digital Health Europe project, in some cases through also facilitators, depending on the complexity of the topic. And the whole idea, again, in line with not reinventing the wheel, is that we document these practices to the benefit of others. So the whole teacher adopter program forces you to document the approach, and this approach can be then replicated and much more easily, and you have access to the originator who's done this already, and this can be scaled up even on a bigger level. So we're looking at success factors, enablers, and the so-called building blocks, which enable us to better understand their specific topic and help others replicate it. There are three different types of twinnings that we offer: knowledge exchange and training type of twinnings. Those are for more straightforward topics and easier topics. There's partial and full adoption. We know from healthcare systems across Europe, not everything can be taken one-to-one. There might be challenges derived from the differences in healthcare systems. So that's why we have also this differentiation. And depending on the type, there's also different budget lines associated with it. So twinning, knowledge exchange is the simplest type of twinning, and full adoption requires more complexity, and therefore you can claim more budget for this. We've run 2 of these calls, one in August of 2019 and one second twinning call in March, and this resulted in funding 24 twinnings coming from 21 different EU countries. As I said, many adopters can participate, so it's even though we have 24 originators, we have 68 adopters, so some of those twinnings are quite rich in terms of adopters. And you can see some examples here just to get a feeling of the topics. Obviously, we're in the domain of the digital transformation of health and care, so the topics you see here are all related to that. We have, for example, an mHealth 2 that allows to manage drugs treatment prescribed by professionals. We have a twinning focusing on a methodology, Absolutable, which is a methodology and framework for quality CEO of health apps. We have the Rehab for Lab twinning, which will be presented shortly in more detail. So they're all different twinnings. They're, as I said, currently ongoing. Some of them are a bit delayed, naturally, due to the pandemic, because many of those adopters are right now preoccupied with higher priority things, understandably. So with that kind of short introduction, I want to give the floor to Willy Allegre, who's an R&D engineer from Kerbape, a rehabilitation center in France, and he's one of our twinning partners. He's conducting a twinning as an originator with multiple adopters. And Willy, I will give you a challenge. We said 10 minutes. I'll give you the challenge of trying to do it in 7.5 minutes, if possible.
Okay, accepted.
Okay.
Thank you, Strail. First of all, I would like to thank Empirica for being invited me today for this webinar, but also to having launched the DHE Twinnings. It has been of great help for us to scale the Rehab Lab innovation up. I'm going to show you. My presentation will be very pragmatic and very quite narrative, and it's all about how to use 3D printing for healthcare professionals to let patients, citizens make their own assistive devices by their own. So here is a very quickly a picture of our rehab center, one of the biggest in France. And there are some specificities such as a lab, integrated lab with engineers. Next slide, please, to go quicker. Thank you. And we mainly work on assistive technologies in this type of specific unit. And 5 years ago, we decided to invest 3D printing and digital fabrication, specifically to make some assistive devices. I mean, small objects of daily living, helping people with disabilities, patients from our rehabilitation center. Next slide, please. So during our technological watch, we have been very interested in the Fab Lab concept, mainly based on 3 concepts behind it. It is small spaces dedicated to citizens in order to do it by themselves, their own projects. So there is knowledge, tool sharing in this type of places, but also digital fabrication is a key in this type of places, because you can find low cost and more low cost 3D printing inside. So we decided, on the next slide, we decided to adapt this concept of Fab Lab to what we call Rehab Lab, which is a Fab Lab dedicated to health and care organization. So that do-it-yourself is like empowerment for people with disability. We mainly work on citizen patient, occupational therapist, and technical reference collaboration. And we work only on assistive devices, small objects of daily living, using one low-cost 3D printer. So on next slide, I'm going to show you quickly the collaboration chain between those 2 actors. So the first one, and it is the big idea behind Rehab Lab, is that citizen is the leader of his own project of assistive devices, and it can be helped by a technical reference, let's say engineer profile, and one healthcare professional, let's say occupational therapist mainly, so that it can be alone. He can build by his own assistive devices that has to be very specific, very parametric. So on next slide, for those who didn't know what is a 3D printer, it use, let's say, plastic materials mainly to print slice by slice one object, and everything is coming from a computer and an object you can design on your own computer. So 3D printing has a lot of benefits, as it is a digital tool fabrication compared to traditional one, as you can see on this slide, such as cloning, adaptation. You can choose the design, even the color and the shape of the assistive device. You can work on the weight. You can share it. It is very fundamental with 3D printing. One object very specific, made locally, can be shared all around the world and can find other patients with the same, exactly the same needs. We have experienced it in the last years. Time and cost are also very interesting. And finally, there are interests to use this type of technology to let patients build a physical object by having access to IT, to a PC, for example, or a tablet. And you can work, for example, with people with tetraplegia. They can build something helping a physical thing by just using a CAD software with, for example, head movement. So it is very, very something exciting. On next slide, yes, so 5 years ago we started this type of activities, and rapidly we would like to share it with others, other French organization at first. So we decided to share assistive devices, to share documents, to launch training, etc. And CarePap Rehab Center, my organization, is seen in this emerging network community as a community manager of this network. So we also define one charter. And so on the next slide, you can see a picture what is right now this Rehab Lab community in France. 23 organizations which have designed, more than 600 assistive devices involving more than 400 citizens. Before applying to the DHE call for project, we were already 15 Rehab Lab in France, and we are mature enough to spread this innovation through Europe 1 year ago, considering that sharing knowledge and best practices has no frontiers. So on next slide, you can see 1 year ago, we decided to apply for the two call for project, one after another, and to address, of course, challenges called digital tools for citizen empowerment and for personal-centered care, of course, but also focused on digital skills for healthcare professionals. 3D printing is something new, and we have to consider new professional skills that has to be trained. So the twinnings are based on basically two training sessions, two progressive training sessions, which have been made first physically on the first project and then remotely by means of video conference tool with the COVID-19 situation, of course. We also implement support by CarePap expert to mount a rehab lab finally. And then we develop a collaborative platform, which is currently under progress, and partners are working on filling it. So I'm going to move not on the next slide, but on the other one, please, to show you that DHE was the best way for us at that time during the training period to scale the Rehab Lab Innovation Hub, to share best practices on 3D printing for custom-made assistive devices, and to start finally the dissemination process with the help of EU fundings, a small amount but enough to scale this innovation up. And after this training period, it's the right time to provide services, for example, trainings directly offered by CarePap Rehab Center. So finally, on the next slide, we are now, thanks to DHE Twinnings, mature enough to deploy services by our own, such as trainings for health and care organizations. So if you are a health and care organization, we can help you through trainings to adopt and mount a rehab lab in your own organization. And finally, if some stakeholders want to participate to spread this innovation concept, we are also looking for the best way to provide trainings in Europe. Finally, my dream as a project leader is to have a strong European network of healthcare professionals in Europe, so that this network will be the leader worldwide on the innovative process of 3D printing for a better patient-citizen empowerment. So thank you for your attention, and you are very welcome to contact me to learn more on the Rehab Lab concept. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Willy. You fully met the challenge. You were on time. And I think it's really a powerful twinning. I mean, it's a powerful topic, and it's fully aligned with priorities of the Commission in empowering patients, making them part of the treatment. So people with disabilities devising themselves with the help of a healthcare professional, things that they can use in their everyday life. It's just a great example. Before we turn to questions, I would just ask for another round of a Mentimeter. So I would ask you again to, if you haven't closed the window, then you can just continue from there, the browser. Otherwise, please once again go to menti.com and enter this code here. We just want to have a feeling from the audience, and we have around 80 participants. So please do go to menti.com. We want to get a feeling how many of you are aware of Twinnings and what kind of topics you're interested in. And then we'll open for, you can raise your hand later on, and then we can discuss more freely how you see this as a possible regular kind of funding scheme or not. So please go to Mentimeter, and shortly we'll be asking the first question, which is, have you heard actually of the Digital Health Europe Twinnings? Or maybe you've heard of Twinnings, but in a different context, in which case there's also an option. So 18 have already voted. You can see it on the top here, menti.com, the header, and there's a code. Okay, let's see how the results are going. Okay, so in the audience we have roughly 1/3 who have heard of Twinnings, Digital Health Europe specifically. Some of you have heard of Twinnings in general. Many of you have not. So hopefully that's of interest to you now. And later on, we'll also post the links to the website where next to utilise, there are also 23 other ongoing Twinnings, and there's news about them and how they're doing, and also opportunities to connect if you're interested in collaborating on these topics. Let's move to the next question. Again, this is just to get a feeling of the room, the virtual room. Would you consider participating in a future Twinning scheme if such scheme is set up and supported? Okay, let's see how it's going. Okay, there are many yeses, 0 nos, and some maybes. And for those of you who have answered maybe, please write in the chat, or in 5 minutes we'll have the Q&A session. Just tell us what the requirements are. How can we improve? Why is it a maybe? Okay, next question. Okay, so you've heard that there's two roles: originator, so you're the owner of the good practice, you have done it and you're willing to teach others, or you're an adopter, or you see yourself as offering both sides. What do you associate with thinking about the good practices you have, or the good practices and topics you want to learn from? Okay, let's see the results. Hopefully it's a bit balanced. Yes, it is balanced. So there are many originators, which is good. So new topics that you can offer. You feel like you're an owner of a good practice that you can share. Not too many adopters though, but we have also the both category. So all in all, quite well balanced. And the last question in this series. Yes, open question to just see what kind of topics do you want to twin about? Topics that you have, so innovative practices, or topics that you're wanting to twin with as an adopter. It's an open-ended question, so we're still in the domain, of course, of digital transformation of health and care. So it can be technology, it can be conditions, as I see here popping up. What topics and themes and solutions are you looking for or willing to provide? Obviously, COVID will also appear inevitably as a topic. quite broad topics I see here. I'm just seeing whether we as a project are not covering some of those through the broad 3 EC priorities that Birgit introduced. But I would say that to a great extent we do. Rare diseases is an interesting one. It's switching too fast for me to analyze. But we see that there's a rich pool of topics that you can either offer or want to adopt. So I guess the question, and then we can move now to the Q&A session, is of course feel free to ask Willy any questions about his twinning, me about the twinning scheme in general, but we would also like to hear from you, your opinion about whether there's a place for the twinning scheme in the future, how you see it, and just your general reflections. So you can use the chat function for this. We'll be collecting a few of those questions via chat. But in the meantime, if you want, you can also raise a hand and then we can take a few live questions as well. Don't be shy in raising a hand or posting a question.
Strahil, actually, we have a few questions in the panel. Do you need help with that?
Sure, yes. I see one, so I'll start maybe on it. Will there be a new twinning call or calls in the nearest future in 2020, so this year? Would be nice to know which funding mechanism should we focus on aiming for a twinning project in digital health. I guess this maybe Birgit could also help us with this, whether there's anything specifically planned. As far as I am aware, Digital Health Europe as a project partly providing the funding for twinnings is ending this year, and we haven't planned any further calls within this project, but maybe twinnings are part of other projects or programs.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, hi.
Yeah, okay, sorry. So yeah, there are also a few programs, projects ongoing under the health program that also advocate and use twinning as an instrument. And then there will be opportunities for you to propose in the new topics of the new programs that I presented. If you think twinning is a useful instrument, it could be taken into the deployment activities under DEP, and also the partnership on transforming health and care. There also twinning is mentioned as one of the activities to be supported by the partnership in order to exactly achieve the aims like you very well presented, Strahil, on exchange and transfer of knowledge, but also the transfer of innovative practices and upscaling from one region to another, and really moving towards this scaling up and deployment and throughout the whole of Europe. But I can't give you any exact dates and pointers and say, look, there is an open call for twinning. Not at the moment, because of this uncertainty on the program final approval and work program publication dates.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions or raised hands? There are no raised hands so far. You can also, if you still have a question for the previous speakers as well, from Lodge, for example. Okay, then I would give the word back to Veli for closing the session. We're on time. We managed to catch up.
Yes, thank you very much, Strihil, and thanks again to all our speakers, panelists. Thank you very much to the participants for joining us today and raising questions. I would like to stress in the end that Digital Health Europe does have many more topics it is dealing with. There are many results and publications published on our website, like patient empowerment roadmap, many consultations, especially on the topic of the European health data space, with patients and citizens, with industry. There is a roadmap on the 1 Million Genomes Initiative brochure that we help produce. Also, many results from Twinnings are available for you to have a look at. Catalog of digital solutions, white papers, and many more. So please have a look. If you are not registered to receive information from us, please do so and follow us. I'm looking forward to further collaborate with you. Stay tuned because we will be organizing more webinars and also further consultations. It would be great to continue this productive collaboration. Thank you very much. Back to you, Strihil and Annette.
Yes, thank you, everyone. We couldn't answer all the questions, but we'll follow up with our speakers and provide those as part of the email with the recording link and the slides. Jose, Annette?
Nothing to add from my side. I would just like to really thank for the speakers because they're very informative presentations. And I think that we managed to pull very interesting insights together today, this morning.
Should you have further suggestions, please do not hesitate to contact us by email. We will be more than happy to continue the discussion. Jose?
Yes, I thank you, Belly. I just wanted to say thank you again for all the speakers for the great presentation and also the great organization of Empirica of this webinar. Thank you very much. And it has been, as always, a pleasure to be the moderator.
Thank you to all attendees, and hopefully we see and hear each other many more times in the next months. Have a nice day.
Yes, thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.